Let's get it. Heart throb never.
All right, we want to talk some more about this disenfranchisement as it applies to American blacks and just the whole immigrant situation. But I want to first touch on another point I left out on the educational deprivation and disenfranchisement video. But there was another example, and one of them was about the college textbooks. Like I went to I had a couple classes with a white chick that I went to school with. We had the same class, same weight factor, but different times of the day. So the class is supposed to be the exact same class. But long story short, I ended up studying with her and doing some note referencing, cross-referencing some notes with her. And the book that she had, put it this way, my book and her book were supposed to be the same. We paid the same amount of money, got them from the same bookstore, was the same book recommended by the professor, but her book had more content in it. And I mean important, valuable content. And my book didn't have it. And so her notes, when cross-referencing, the stuff that wasn't in my book, but was in her book, this was the stuff that they were studying. This was the stuff they were being quizzed on. So that's just another, example of how deep and how sinister this thing is. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. But on to the employment or financial disenfranchisement. One of my homeboys, he dated this chick. And, I won't mention her ethnicity, but he dated this chick, and they had moved in together. Now, mind you, this dude was the type of dude, he was always on top of his credit and all this stuff, so he made sure that he had everything. Plus he, kept a job, just an upstanding dude. But the chick that he was with, she didn't have a job. Never had any work history or nothing, didn't have no credit. So they both applied for a credit card. And by all means, he shouldn't have been denied for anything for the credit card at all, because he had the work history. His bank account was on point. Now, we young at this point, but he had all this stuff in order. Everything that would be a snapshot of the person that you would give a credit card to, he should have been the person. But they denied him the credit card and approved his girlfriend with the credit limit of $10,000. And she didn't have a job, no credit history, nothing, and, we just sat around like, what in the, how in the hell? It's just these types of things. You could talk to a whole lot of American black people, but specifically black males, and they could tell you that they experience this thing all the time, and, I'll get off from that and on to more situations of, employment, disenfranchisement, and struggles and everything. There's an area in my hometown that I grew up in. Now, when I'm younger, I'm not thinking anything about it, but there was this particular area of town, and like I said, now that I think about it, I should have known, but back then, I didn't know. But in this particular part of town, there were black people over there. And by all means, we just assumed that they was all black. But now that I think about it, all of the people in that section of town, and it was just like a neighborhood, maybe a street and a couple streets over from each other, maybe 3 streets. But everybody's last name started with an M and was the initial part of the last name Mick, like McDonald or something. So all the people's names over there was Mick something, and it was all black. Everybody's like, all of the names were Mick something, and they were all black. They didn't all have the same last name. These are different Micks, like Mick whatever. Like every name is different, but the first part of it, the prefix of it was Mick something, MC something. And so, and I remember going to some of their homes, and we never saw like their parents. And if we did see them, they rarely spoke, or they didn't speak at all. Not so much that they was being rude to us, they just almost seemingly like they made sure that they didn't speak. And also, these same people, they like these same people, like either their parents was in education as educators, or they had jobs at the police department or at like the GM or something like that. And I'm like, man, what in the, like, it's now, but it's just, man, I'm telling you, it's just now that I think about it, it's so clear. So I came across this article from the hometown I grew up in, and this chick who wrote the article, it's funny that her last name is Mick something. And she's black, but she talked about how her father and mother, grew up poor, and how she grew up poor there. But she gave a little bit of history of my hometown and mentioned how the American blacks that were already positioned in the hometown and in America first, there was a wave of immigrants coming from everywhere, not just black, but white, and from Europe, and some even from Mexico, and all types of stuff. And there was like an actual, riot over fighting for jobs in my hometown's area in the mid 1900s. And I'm like, wow, like this is incredible. So like even back then, it was this constant fight for community and local resources through employment and that type of thing. This is leading to this disenfranchisement type of reality once again, even back then. And we know that part of the definition for disenfranchisement is, being denied the right to vote, but it also means just being denied privileges and rights as a citizen. It doesn't exclusively mean being denied the right to vote. So a lot of American blacks with these industrial jobs in the city that I grew up in back at that time, was being squeezed out by white immigrants and by black immigrants. So for the American black person, we typically don't know and didn't know that there was a delineation amongst phenotypically black people. We just thought everybody was black, but I'm giving you all more of a history of how this thing works and how it actually went down. So on top of that, they was dealing with phenotypically black immigrants coming from elsewhere for industrial jobs, which means that there would be less jobs for the American blacks there. Then having to deal with, in that area, there was a county Ku Klux Klan that, put their piece and troublesome interaction on top of everything. So it's just, like, man, you can't make this thing up. But all in all, when you look at it, you can see that, and not that this didn't affect, some naturalized born citizen white people either, but they had white privilege, so they wouldn't be affected to it in that degree. Maybe to some degree, but not like that. But for American blacks, and it's particularly difficult to grasp because the world, actually the Western world has this view already of what color is and what black is and what white is. So our stuff is more black and white, pun intended. Elsewhere, there's more nuance and more, variation and things like that. And so I guess basically to that point, the Western world is kind of behind, or America's behind, because the rest of the world has more affinity for the nuance of things, which typically Americans don't. You're either black or you're white, or you might, be classified as something in between or something else altogether. But over here in America, we just typically thought if you had black skin, afro or curly afro hair, that you was just a black person and everybody was black. We didn't know that there was ethnic variation. See that's what contributes to the American black disenfranchisement, economically, educationally. The education part, you can be disenfranchised and deprived just by way of, systematic racism and things like that. But when you pair that with phenotypically black immigrants coming in, and then they get to slide into the education system, you thinking that these people are your people culturally, ancestrally, and they're not. And then there's a lot of little sneaky things that go on that way too. But for me to have seen a whole neighborhood with everybody over there's last name prefix being Mick something, MC, or even the pronunciation Mick, whatever. We know where typically these people, descendant wise, where they come from. And most likely, and this is no slight to them or no diss, this is just a flat out observation. More than likely, they were from Jamaica. Maybe the children were born in the United States or whatever, in my city, but more than likely, they were Jamaican due to the Irish control that the Irish had in Jamaica, which would mean that's, why they came there with the last name. And then for most of them to go into the police for like you can't make this stuff up, man. You can't make it up. So I kind of went off on, talking about the economic disenfranchisement, but those things are things that play into that. And this channel is going to become more about, critical thinking, points and life strategies for American blacks to decipher and work through this thing, this tangled web that we've been placed in the middle of, and have to try to untangle to see the clear path. It may not even be called Hard Throb Never soon. I might name it something else altogether. But in any event, this is the just another talking point on this whole disenfranchisement thing, and I'll continue it until I burn myself out of talking about this type of thing with disenfranchisement. I'm out.
Hard Throb Never.